Okay, I decided I'm going to start reading playing cards, and I kind of was looking for some kind of vintage decks to use, and there are vintage decks available. I did purchase one that I saw on Amazon. This is called the bicycle playing cards, the Bourbon deck, 808 proof. That's high proof, and it's just kind of a beigey deck. Someone who reviewed this deck said it's perfect for reading, not for playing. He uses it for because he's a card reader. So I bought this deck. It comes in a great little box, the sealed and everything, and and I like the cards a lot. They're very they're this nice right color. They got nice pips. I love the court cards are pretty too as well. So it's a nice deck. And I won't be altering this deck, but I did do one thing to alter it. And I did, there's this thing, when you do scrapbooking, scrapbookers would know what this is. This is it's a distressor for paper. And what you do is you take a card that's just a regular piece of paper or a cardboard or whatever, and then you run this down the edges. And this distresses the edges. Just like when you do tarot decks and you trim the edges, well, this is like distressing the edges. Just one of these. I don't know what these are called, but they're on Amazon. I got it on Amazon. They have several sharp things that you can use, probably last a very long time. And then you can just distress the edges to make them look a little bit older. And what I did here is, just to show you the difference, these are the same number of cards. We're just looking at the sides now, and see how different they look. And the size, that they make them much thicker. So this is the same number of cards. This is 24 cards each. This is not distressed, and this is distressed. So that's kind of cool. And it feels, it's rough, but it still shuffles. And it just gives it an older feel to it. Kind of cool. So one of the ways you can distress a deck is kind of look for a vintagey type deck, and then maybe just do the edges like this if you're so inclined to do that. I'm going to finish this up later and do that. Now the other thing I wanted to play around with, and is what I did play around with, was antiquing or altering my own decks. Now I bought this deck. It's called the Vintage Garden Art from Piatnik deck, Piatnik cards on Amazon. This is just a regular deck of cards. It had 2 decks in it, and I figured I'd play around and try to age them, see if I could age them myself. And I'll show you what I did and what I used. Now here again, here are the edges. This is because I have 2 decks there. I can show you the difference. This is the aged one because I use this thing here, and this is the regular size, the regular. So it really does make them look. It makes them thicker and kind of more got more body to them than these. Now, what I did with this deck, and you can see the difference in coloration. I colored them, and with the coloring thing that I did, how I colored them, I'll show you how I did that. And they're mottled, and so they do look old, or different anyways. They don't have the stark white. And when you do this technique that I'm going to show you, what happens is, because I use 2 different colors, some are darker than others. That looks really old. Some are look more purpley, some look more red, depending on depends on the color of the card as well. I mean, if there's more red in the card, they tend to look more red. So that's my altered deck. And then I altered the backs, put the color on. There's some variability again with the backs because there's old cards, they have variability. Once after I put the coating on these, I'll tell you what I used. And let them dry overnight, they become like regular cards. They slide, they slip. Not as slippery as they are when they're brand new. They feel like a deck that you have after the summer. You know, you get some deck of cards before the summer, and at the end of the summer, they get really, kind of oily and thick, and that's how these feel. They feel like an old deck. It really does feel like an old deck. Now, these colors may not be what you're interested in, and I was kind of messing around with the colors, but I'm going to show you what I did to make these colors. I'm going to take one of the cards from here that's not been done. Now, what I did to make these is I used this Faber-Castell gelatos. These are pigmented, like color sticks. They're kind of like the consistency of a lipstick. And they come in all kinds of colors. Now, I couldn't find my stash, so I did find a stash of like four or five colors, and these are the two I picked. But they probably do have something like a dark linen or maybe a brown that's less orangey that you could use if you wanted more of a subtle color. I mean, these are kind of crazy, but I like them. So I'm going to just show you what I did and how I did it. What I do use is I use these plastic gloves, and not because these things have no smell. I think they're non-toxic. Kids use these, so they're not toxic. They're a creamy type of crayon that is color fast once it dries, and it won't rub off. Unless you put water on it, then it does rub off, but that's okay. So I just kind of use these really cheap gloves. And then how I made these particular cards is, I don't know if you can see those, is I just, very easily, I just took a thing here and I did this thing, and then I did the same, different color, and I just did that. That's pretty much all I did. And then I just rub it in. And I think the advantage of using one of these gloves, or these gloves, is that there's going to be less friction with your natural finger, so it spreads much easier. So there you have it. You have a card that's colored. It's modeled, which is nice because it doesn't all color the same way. These are transparent colors. And if you want to touch up, like there's a little white here, I can just touch that up and make it a little dark. And then I go in a circular motion so I don't leave too many lines. And then I do the backs. Do the backs. And I just go round, round, round. You can do them very, very fast. You can get this done easily and in less than a couple hours. Maybe in an hour. And then you just take your card and you kind of run it up and down the sides. And this one is done. Now, when you finish this, it's going to be sticky. You're going to feel the stickiness in it. And what you can do, once they dry, they won't be sticky. They'll feel a little hint of greasy, just like an old playing card. But right now, it's quite sticky. I mean, if it stayed like this, you won't be able to use them. So you can take a hair dryer and heat them up to make them less sticky. Or you just leave them overnight. Just set them out overnight. And then they dry. And then when they dry, they become very smooth and not sticky at all. They're not sticking at all. And you can shuffle them. Cool. And as I said, depending on the colors you use, you could probably have them look a little bit more antique-y. Now, this morning I wanted to take a couple of cards, and I did. One card wasn't dark enough, so I started putting more color on it to darken it up. And when I added the purple, it started taking off the dried gelato that was underneath. So once the cards dry and you put more gelato over them, they react differently than if you're just putting them on the plain laminate. So what I ended up doing, and I kept adding more, and then it just, the circle, the whiteness just kept getting bigger and bigger. So then what I did was I went and I just took a paper towel and I wiped the card. The color stayed on the edges, but it cleared all the color off the center. Then I dried it with a towel, a paper towel again, and then I was able to color it again. So these can be, you know, if you think you have a problem with one and you try to add more color over the color, it may start to degrade. Don't worry about it. Just add water with a paper towel. It'll take the color off, and then dry it, and then it'll take the color again. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So that kind of worked out okay. Now this one I did this morning. This one, I just decided to play around with it. This was one I did yesterday. This is color spreading. And I think I put more, I don't know what color, I maybe put more purple and more brown on it or something. And it's definitely harder to color it the second time because you're putting the gelato over dry gelato. So you're not working with the same substrate. So that's something to keep in mind. Now what happened with this card, which was really cool, it really got much more mottled, much more aged by doing that. So that's something to keep in mind. Now the whiteness started coming up over here, but I'm not going to worry about it. And there's the backs. So it's kind of cool. You make your own deck, make your deck your own. I was thinking maybe putting little writing on each card to make it my own. So that is one way of changing your deck, altering your deck to make it more yours or to make it look a little bit older. Now over here, I did decide to do these. This one is one I just did, so I'm not going to show you that one. Now these is from this deck. It's not the deck I did last night, but this one this morning. And this one I just used one color. I just used this color. Now there's a little purple on here because there was purple on my workspace here. But so you can just use one color, and they would be, if you use just one of these colors, whatever color you choose to use, you won't get the variability that I got with this. I got a lot of I got a variability with these cards. I mean, I kind of like that, but if you want to be more consistent with the with coloring it and the outcome, the final product, you probably just want to use one color for the front and the back. And that's what these are. These are all this color. They have probably, they have 24 colors to pick from and stuff. So there's a lot to pick from. The thing that makes a big difference is this little baby here, which is it's a paper distressor or edger, paper edger for distressing. This is very useful. I went online to see how to distress a playing card deck, and a lot of places talked about putting them in tea or coffee, and then you'd have to put them, dry them off, and then you'd put them in, you press them, and then you'd iron them, and then you do a lot of stuff, and that's a good way to age paper, is with coffee or tea or any kind of dye. You can age paper that's untreated with that. But these cards are laminate. They're already laminated, so you're not working with plain paper. You're working with something that's already got something on it. I don't know how this would take. I don't think this would take tea dyes very well. And for it to take a tea dye, you'd probably have to leave them in the tea bath for quite a long time, and then they're just going to ruin the cards. So this, even though it's a water-soluble product, it is not. It is color fast once it dries, and you're not adding water to the card, which I think is a good thing. Not adding water to the card to keep the integrity of the card. So if you're looking to alter your cards because you want to, have a unique deck to do some card readings, this is just a natural. This is a natural, not natural. It's just a regular playing deck that I got from Piatnik. It's an upscale company, I think, from Austria. And I just kind of did it, and it's kind of cool. Again, it may not be everybody's colors. There's a lot of variability. There's a purple. You can do it in very little time. They feel, the thing is, which I can't get over, is they feel just like a deck that's been around all summer. And then you see, like, this is kind of cool. You got You can add more colors. Like I think I added a little black in this just to test it because this was my first card, so I did some more colorations in that one. So you can definitely change your decks just like you do with tarot decks when you cut them down and you edge them. This is your you're adding color and you're getting rid of the edge, so you're doing it a little differently depending on your sensibility. And so that's my altered deck. That's my latest card that's decidedly different, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I'll just leave it. And it's still sticky. I got to wait till it dries, and then I can live with it. That's not a problem. So this is about altering your deck for readings, altering a playing card deck to a reading deck, and giving it a little more personality, giving it your personality, rather than just a regular old deck that's, you pick out of a box that just has, it's pretty, but it's, a little on the boring side. And then again, the other option is to buy a vintage deck. They do have the vintage decks. And just get a vintage deck, and you can leave it as the vintage deck, and then you could just, if you want, just do the edges. And that gives it a cool look, having the edges be rough and just like an old cards. So that kind of takes it to another level. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Have a great day.